So as long as it works now, and we'd be all right. It's
how's it looking?
well, it says we're live now up in the corner, so
good to go then.
Yeah, I would say go for it.
Hello. I'll try that again.
All right, there we go. Let's get off that good start. So yeah, I should probably cough now and get that out of the way too. So.
Hello again, everybody, and welcome to an NLBMArt Webcast brought to you by Ball Caps and Bagpipes. I'm one half of Ball Caps and Bagpipes, John McKellar.
And I'm the other half of Ball Caps and Bagpipes, Jason Durr. And I have an exciting guest we've had on before, and we brought Tad back. Tad, how you doing?
Good. I'm like the Andy Richter.
I was going to say the three amigos now. You know, it's Andy Richter works, but three amigos.
or the Joe Pesci to our Riggs and Motto.
Dubs. Good to be back.
It's great to have you back, Tad. And we have once again on the show Chris Brown. He's very generously agreed to come back on and finish what we started a few weeks back. We had some technical problems there. We weren't able to finish the video live. We kept talking for an hour after the video had stopped, and it was a really great conversation. So we're going to try our best to recreate as much of that as we can. Chris, how are you doing? First off, I know that you picked up a bit of an injury at the end of 2020. You've been rehabbing, and it's been a long road back. How are you doing just now physically?
I'm doing pretty good considering, but it's a small recovery every day, but I can tell that it's getting a little bit better. I went from using a knee scooter to using crutches last week to kind of a cane today. So yeah, I spend half the day getting it loose, and then I enjoy about an hour, and then it gets sore. So then but I think I'm a couple weeks away from walking at least. So looking forward to that.
So for anyone who's tuning in who doesn't know already, you suffered a very severe leg break. I want to come back to something that we covered the first time you were on back in October, and that's the fact that you were a minor league pitcher in the Chicago Cubs system for several years. Given that you were a pro athlete and you know it's a long slog this season, it stands to reason you would have suffered some injuries. How does this compare to the injuries that you would have suffered when you were playing? And did you ever have an injury that left you out for quite as long as this? Because obviously that would now be, what, 2 months?
It's been 2 months. This would have been devastating during a baseball season for any baseball player. But it's my right leg, so I wouldn't have been able to push off. So throwing would have been, out of the question. But so I never had anything that I had some breaks during baseball seasons, but so I broke my back in the fall, so in college, so it didn't really affect my season because I rehabbed. My dog just ran. I had rehabbed and got back. I didn't have surgery, and then I was ready to go. And so I did that, and then ended up having surgery, 12 years later. And then, so the only injury I really had during the season was a broken jaw. And so since I don't throw with my face, I pitched the next week. So it wasn't too bad. I mean, it hurt and it ruined my diet, but it certainly didn't keep me from going out there and pitching. So.
When you say you broke your jaw, was that from did you get hit by a line drive?
Yeah. I was actually pitching in San Antonio against UT San Antonio. And it's kind of cool. They clocked my pitch, and then they clocked the ball off the bat. And so it came in, I pitched at 93 and it came back 103. And so needless to say, I didn't catch it. I didn't see it. It hit me right here, which is actually, from what I'm told from the doctors, is the weaker part of the jaw. But oddly enough, it broke right down the middle. And so I don't know if it was just the compression, but it broke down the middle. And
Jesus Christ.
And so my mouth instantly started filling up with blood. And I was mad because the ball actually made it over the shortstop after it hit me. We didn't even get the out. That's, so now this guy gets to hit me in the face and he's safe at first. So, yeah, I actually tried to stay in the game, and the coaches wouldn't allow it. So, which was probably a good move.
Did you suffer a concussion? I can only
I
imagine
didn't.
you.
Well, no, I don't think I did. That's, you think back to that, and I was probably pretty lucky it wasn't a couple inches higher. Could have got hit in the eye, which could have been really devastating, or even higher in the head. And we've seen the kind of injuries that have happened in the big leagues, and even that year in college. That was the last year they used what they called -5 bats. And so, like any one of us right now, I'm telling you, could grab a -5 bat, no matter how long it's been. We could grab a -5 bat and go out and hit a home run in batting practice. I mean, those things were like lightning rods. So the next year they outlawed those bats, and they went to -3s, and then eventually they went to composite, so they don't even have those anymore. But yeah, it's there were so many injuries that year. It made them wake up. I think there was 5 other guys in Division I baseball that year that got hit in the face or the head, which 1 is too many, but 5 seems like a lot. But that's not even counting the other body parts pitchers got hit in. That was just the ones that got hit in the head. So.
Nice. Now you mentioned that you got back on the mound just a week later. Did you feel any lasting effects? Obviously, with a broken jaw and being hit at that speed, I can only imagine that it would have had some kind of knock-on effect with your performance, or how you were feeling.
It's probably a psychological effect. But so luckily I didn't see the ball coming at me. But to prepare for that, I literally went out the next day and stood at the end of the batting cage on the other side of the cage while the guys were hitting. So balls were just, constantly flying at me. Just kind of getting over that as quickly as possible, because I had every intention of getting back out there as soon as possible. Yeah, they wanted to wire my jaw shut, but the doctors, because I kind of freaked out, and when it happened, I grabbed my jaw and I kind of pulled, because I couldn't, your mouth fills up with blood, you freak out, you do things that you wouldn't normally do. And so I put my hand in my mouth, and I couldn't get it in there because everything was smashed. And so I just freaked and grabbed and pulled. Any other moron would do. And luckily for me, it kind of lined things back up, and over the next week started to heal. So the doctor said I could wire it shut if I wanted to, or I could, I could just let it heal. And so obviously I didn't want my face, sliced up. So I just well, it'll heal. So went out to pitch the next week. I was glad they let me pitch, but I went out to pitch the next week, and I just kind of, kept my mouth shut and kind of sucked my lips in. So I felt like nothing was moving around, but it went well. I mean, I threw a 2-hit shutout I guess I was afraid to let him hit the ball, but whatever motivates you, I went out and pitched a good game. So, and then just kind of moved on from there. And I think people, at least for the rest of the season, tend to forget about it. So, but it's kind of cool. I'll run into some people that, from the college and stuff, administrators, and even 20 years later, and they like to bring up stuff like that. So
I remember when you ripped your jaw off after getting hit in the face.
Remember when you broke your face? I was like, yeah, I remember that.
Would you say that that's the type of pitcher that you wear, the pissed off motivator rather than calm? A lot of guys you'll watch and they have the ice blood in their veins, is the old cliche, where sometimes it's the opposite. You find that a lot with closers, where they're just kind of pissed off dudes who just want to throw hard and get people out, and they're kind of just in that focused zone. Would you say that you were that type of pitcher?
I was definitely that kind of pitcher. I was the guy that I would find a reason to get ticked off before ever setting foot on the mound, and it didn't take much. It could be anything. I'm watching the other team warm up, and if somebody's screwing around, I instantly take that as an insult to me. I'm like, how are you going to screw around when you're facing me? Kind of thing. And so I you just use it, but it was always something. And sometimes it was my teammates, on the way to the bus, or on the way to the field, like, quit screwing around. I'd like some runs today, kind of thing. And by the time I hit the field, man, I was, I guess they say I had the red ass. So I was pretty hot. So
we certainly use it to your advantage. As I was doing my research today, I noticed a stat that I pointed out to you earlier before we came on the air. 110 strikeouts in the 1997 season, which at the time was your school's record. And who's this young man right here?
This is Maddox. Apparently, Mama forgot I was on a podcast.
Hello.
Hello, Maddox. Hello from Scotland.
These guys are all over the world. Isn't that cool?
Those guys are all over the world.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now so are you, Maddox.
Now you are too.
Yeah.
We've been in Colorado.
There's snow there.
This is a memorable trip for him because Daddy broke his leg.
So Maddox, do you play baseball?
Yeah, I do.
What position do you play?
He didn't have one yet.
Not yet.
Hey, we're just working on his little season hasn't started yet, so we work on throwing and fielding and hitting and those kind of things. But those are his drawings. He's showing off his.
Wow,
that's great. I think Dad might have to try and get that put up in the Hall of Fame.
He's taking over, isn't he? He's taking over
alongside some of the portraits.
Yeah, he works a lot. When I'm in here working, he's usually in here. So, are you gonna go back in the house? Okay, you gotta be quiet.
Don't worry.
Okay,
Maddox.
go on. You were talking about the season. Sorry.
Yeah. So don't worry, Maddox. My daughter crashed one of my interviews too and sat through a good 20 minutes of it. I think it was our first interview, Taz. It was you and Travis, and she crashed into that one. So you're not the first one to do it.
Yeah, we'll see how loud he gets. Hopefully, he's not loud.
Just to pick up on that, Chris, how important is that father-son bond over your other passion, which of course is sports art? Is that something that you take seriously and do on purpose, or is it just a kind of byproduct of your daily life?
Well, I mean, Maddox came along pretty late in our lives. I'm a little older, so that I don't know how much different that makes it. But when I was young, growing up, especially his age, my dad wasn't around a lot. He was an oil field guy, so he'd be gone before I'd get up, and then I'd be in bed before he'd come home. So here, come on. Actually, got in trouble. Mama's here. So he wasn't around, and so that always bothered me growing up, not having him around, and really kind of hurt our relationship, to be honest with you. So that's that. But so when I was actually coaching when Maddox was born, and he started getting to about 3, and started getting into stuff and doing things, and it was getting to be where I was gone a little too much, and so I literally stopped coaching. I got out of coaching because of that. So now I'm able to. I literally, I come straight home, and that's the first thing I do is spend time with my family. So it's really important, because for me at least, I want to be able to look back and know I was a good dad, not a good coach. If I have to choose between the two, that's the one I'm going to choose. And I hope that's the case with most people. And maybe other guys can find more balance. For me, it was, I wasn't all in because my head was on my family and my head was at home. And, I always told myself, I coached for 17 years. I told myself if I ever got to where I was standing on the field thinking about being somewhere else, it was time to get out. And that's obviously what the case was. And so, I did. I got out. So surprised a lot of people, but you gotta do what's best for you and your family. And so that's what I did.
That's a great answer, Chris.
So automatically, now that you're coaching, now that Maddox is playing baseball, the first person to ask the coach is you, right?
Well, yeah, and I'm trying to avoid it right now. I want him to enjoy it. So Yeah, I don't know if I'm going to have to, eventually I want to. I think right now it's send him out there and let him have fun, try not to take it too serious. Just try to have fun. So he'll want to go back. And then when he gets to a little older, where maybe it is starting to get a little more serious and he wants to really learn, the right way to do things, then, of course, the hardest thing is going to be for me to just shut up and, not pull him aside and say, hey, this is what you need to do. But yeah, so, obviously I get to be around, some pretty prominent athletes at times. And the thing I took from Peyton Manning a couple summers ago was he said, because somebody asked him, was he the kind of guy that would force his kids to go out and practice? And he said, no. He said, I took it from my dad. His dad was Archie, who played for the Saints. He said, I never once told my kids that they had to practice, but if they ever came to me and asked, I was always going to be there no matter what. I would never say no. And so I'm going to try to adopt that, to where I'm not forcing him to do something. But if he comes to ask, then I want to be the guy that's going to be there for him all the time.
So that's interesting you say that. So I grew up with a prominent Seattle Supersonic player, and I played with his son. He was a year younger with me, and we used to go to the local club to play basketball. Everyone that, and his dad pushed him to. He was crying on the court, didn't want to be there.
Yeah.
He fell down there, and I took that whole mantra as like he does not want to be there, and he did well in college, but he didn't get that push to become pro. And we chatted about that, and he said, well, my dad pushes me. I said, are you enjoying it? He's like, no, not at all.
Yeah.
And he's just like, I happen to be somebody that can play basketball, but I get zero enjoyment out of it. And he said it took him a long time before he could actually really kind of enjoy playing again. So yeah, that's one of those.
Yeah. Being, I got to go pretty far myself. And I'll tell you this, it stops being fun when it becomes a job. There's still fun aspects to it. Obviously, playing the game is still fun, but when your job's on the line, when as a pitcher, a couple of real bad outings and you could literally just be out the door, that added stress, I guess sometimes, the fun, I guess, kind of, I don't know how to explain it. Like, it's still fun competing. It's still fun. It's still something that you're passionate about and you enjoy doing, but it's not like, I guess, like playing in junior high and high school where, you're literally just, you're learning how to play the game still. And you're with your buddies. It's just kind of a different aspect, I guess you'd say.
Right, so now that we have gotten the unexpected guest out of the way, and Jason has managed to save the day with that question there, let's get back on track. What I was bringing up, I think, before
Special guest, come on, we had a special guest on. It was unexpected. It was a special guest.
An unexpected special guest.
There you go.
He's very much a VIP guest. So yeah, 1997, 110 strikeouts as a Northwestern State University Demon. At the time, the school record, I haven't been able to find any info on whether that's been matched or beaten. Does that still stand? Do you know?
I believe it does. Yeah.
What did that mean to you at the time? Because obviously you've gone to it's a pretty well-known school.
It's been
some great talents have come from there.
Yeah, and it's been over 20 years. So obviously I'm not a math teacher, but I think it's been over 20 years. Mm. So it meant a lot to me even at the time because of the pace that I was striking people out. I think I had, my innings pitched was in the 90s. So, to have 110 strikeouts in 90 some innings pitched, I was proud of that. But, it is a single person's kind of record. So it's not, it was nice to do my part on some good teams, and I always had the mantra, if I strike them out, I don't have to depend on anybody else to get the out. So anytime I had a chance to go for it, you know, I would go for that strikeout. But you know, sometimes it backfires on you too. You know, guys aren't too happy when you're trying to strike a guy out and you end up walking him or hitting him or something. But it is what it is, I guess. But
So I'm curious to ask you about this because it just popped into my head. So John's never actually played with metal bats before, so I don't know how much of that would make a difference because there's nothing worse than being a pitcher and seeing a guy do a check swing and then get that dying quail past the second baseman's head, and that's there. So did that go in part of the makeup of trying to strike guys out because that happens so often, and you're just like at least once or twice a game you're like, oh god damn it, I should have put that ball just out of reach to get the swing at because you check swing and it's out in right field now.
Yeah, well, I mean, you kind of learn in baseball too that things even out, so those kind of, they get those little duck farts and it drives you crazy. But at the same time, sometimes a guy will hit an absolute missile, and it'll go right to a guy, or a guy will make a diving catch, and take one away. So you kind of tell yourself that it evens out throughout the year. If you start letting that creep in, that these guys are always getting these little hits off me, then that's what you're constantly thinking about, and then it literally becomes a thing, and it has a mind, a world of its own, where if you get in your head, we'll get it back, or it'll make up for it, something. You just got to try to stay positive on those kind of things. But I will tell you this, I think it's harder to strike guys out when they're using metal bats though, because they don't have that as much of a fear as that inside pitch, because they know they can fight it off. Whereas you're thinking, I've got wood in my hand, and if I don't get the barrel inside and it gets on my hands at all, it splinters. So, which by the way is probably more fun than striking a guy out. It's jamming him, and breaking his bat. I'll tell you a story about that. We traded this guy one time. This was in independent ball. We traded this guy. He'd been on our team for a couple of years, and I'm not going to say any names, but anybody that played with me will probably know. But he was kind of a pompous ass, to be honest with you. Kind of a pretty boy, worried about how he looked, kind of guy. So, for the guys who like to get dirty, and like I had a thing, I didn't clean my cleats. That tells you, like, nobody touched my cleats. If I came in and the clubby cleaned my cleats, I'd throw them in the trash, because I was superstitious that way. But so anyway, we trade this guy, right? And we knew that he had these they called them triple dip bats. And they dip them, and it would just make them really, really hard. So the fact that they were triple dipped, he was kind of cheating a little bit. He cheated in a lot of ways, but we won't get into that. But, so the first game that we play against him, we traded him to a team in the league. And so the first time we played against him, we set out as the starting pitchers. We're like, we're going after those bats. So we ended up, I think we broke like 5 of his bats in 3 games. So it was very gratifying, I got to tell you.
Was there any backlash from this player after the fact? Did he kind of take issue or umbrage with it? Or
I'm sure he cried. I don't know. We never talked to him about it, but
so Christopher, I want to touch on more of your playing time shortly, but we should talk about your art for a bit as well. For the time being, why don't you tell us first off how you got on with the October NLBM campaign that you came on with Tad and the rest of the artists, how you got on there, and what you're working on now?
So how I got involved with that, Tad actually reached out to me, right, Tad? He reached out to me on Instagram, I think.
More than likely.
Ted can't remember, because Ted reached out to 100 different artists. So he reached out to me, and I think at the time when I first saw it, I was driving to Louisiana for a Hall of Fame thing, and so I wasn't able to get back to him right away. So like a lot of time passed, and so then I actually called him up. I think it was getting really late, and I called him up and asked if I could still be involved in it, and of course he let me do it. So I was very grateful for that. and I thought it went really well. I thought, Tad obviously was the driving machine behind the whole thing and really getting people involved, and had a great idea with how to do things and how to get us, to get money raised and that kind of thing. So, so I thought it was an awesome thing, and it was really cool to be involved in.
Excellent, man. And what are you working on now?
Well, I got two things going. I'm still finishing up a few of the 2021 Hall of Fame, Louisiana Sports Hall of Fame portraits. I got 2 more of those to do. So I'm halfway through one of them. And then I decided to do this. It's obviously a pretty good sized piece, but I got a pretty good sized building that my studio is in, and I have some wall space, and I got tired of looking at blank walls. And so, so I'm doing some big pieces for that. And I think the next one I do is going to be like 4 times this size. And I want it to cover one whole wall. But I'm also doing a different style than what I normally do. My sports art, I don't think looks anything like this. So, this is all acrylic, and it's a little bit impressionist kind of thing, but I don't know. It's hard to say. It's not really like anything else I've seen. So, but Jesus is big in my life. And so it's obviously the first one I wanted to do and make sure that that's the first space I see when I come into my studio. So that's the plan. I think I'm probably about 85% done with it.
That's awesome, man.
Thank you.
Now, you mentioned the Louisiana Sports Hall of Fame portraits that you're working on for 2021. Any highlights for you? For instance, are you working on any players or figures that mean a lot to you personally, being that you obviously went to Northwestern State?
Well, they're all important to me. So just because, I've been doing this since 2009. Every time they announce a class, it's like Christmas for me. An induction class, like I that's what I look forward to. Like, it's super exciting to see who's going in next. Gosh, we got backed up because of the COVID thing, so we haven't even had the 2020 ceremony, and here I am just about done with the 2021 portraits. So I've delivered the 2020s. We're still going to have that ceremony, and then later in the year we'll have the 21s. But do you remember Ricky Weeks? Ricky Weeks at all?
Yep.
Played for Milwaukee.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll just show it to you.
I think I have a Ricky Weeks jersey in the shop right now.
There you go. So that's Ricky Weeks Sports Hall of Fame portrait. Call that a sneak peek because they're not released yet. You're not supposed to see them, but
Sweet.
May get some backlash for that. But Glenn Dorsey, Ricky Weeks, Marcus Colston, who played for the Saints, Abdul Rauf played for Denver, and a few other people in the NBA.
Yeah.
So I've done a lot of extra stuff too. I don't want to sit here and start pulling out a bunch of artwork, but I've done some big pieces for them to sign that I'll put in my shows, eventually too. Because the last show I did, in my shows, everything is signed by the person that's in it. So the last show I did, I think the biggest piece was like 14. Well, it was like 20 by 22 maybe. So you think that's a good size until you start to try to fill up a gallery, and then you realize, man, those look pretty small on the wall. And so now, like, the smallest piece that I've done since then for the shows, something like, I don't know, maybe like 24 by 36. And that's the smallest one. And they've gone up, from there. So I'm filling up some wall space, but there's some pretty cool ones too. Ronnie Coleman's a 2020 guy. I don't know if you guys are into bodybuilding. He was 8-time Mr. Olympia, 8 in a row, in fact. And so he'll sign that. And then Nick Saban, you've probably heard of that guy. I think he's a decent coach, I think. So
Okay, somewhere.
He's won a championship or two. these
Yeah,
days?
just the winningest coach of all time. But yeah.
So you mentioned the delayed 2020 ceremony. What's the time frame at the moment? How is it looking for getting both of those in this year? Are you expecting that that will be done at the same time, or are they going to
So
still separate the ceremonies?
originally they decided they were going to do one early in the summer and then turn around and do another one at the end of the summer, because we typically go in June and we do the one ceremony, and then but because we have two to do now, they're going to try to do 2020 in June and push back 2021 to the end of the calendar year in December. So of course that could change, but I don't know. Hopefully Louisiana follows Texas and what they did today with lifting the COVID protocols and opening things back up. If they open things back up, then obviously we can get the 800 or 900 people in the venue for the ceremony like we normally do, and that's always exciting. So
Right, now I just have a couple more questions that I want to ask about your playing days, and then we'll flip it to the guys, because I feel like I'm monopolizing your time here, and I'm sure that Jason will have some more questions, and I would like to give Tad an opportunity to ask anything he wants to know. The first question that I would like to ask is, given that you were in the Cubs minor league system as a pitcher, who would you say is the most prominent or most notable player that you either played alongside or against during that time?
I'd have to say probably Eric Hinsky. And he doesn't, I mean, he's not going to be a name that probably jumps out at everybody. He ended up being, he was an interesting story. He was a guy that played at Arkansas before getting signed with the Cubs. Just a beast of a guy. On a couple occasions that season, he had 2 home runs a game, like back-to-back home runs, and he could really hit. Well, the Cubs didn't have him any higher than AA, and then they let him go in the Rule 5 draft. The next year, I think, who was it that picked him up?
The Blue Jays, I think. Because I believe he won.
Toronto.
I think he won Rookie of the Year in Toronto, didn't he?
Rookie of the Year. Yeah. So we'll bash the Cubs a little bit and say, obviously you didn't have him anywhere higher in AA, and here he is, the Rookie of the Year the next year. And so, but his career went on. I think he was on several World Series champion teams. He was that guy that come off the bench and pinch hit, or those kind of things. But to be around that you imagine the stories that guy has. Being all those different championship teams. I think he was with the Red Sox when they won it, and might even been with Chicago when they, I think he may even gone back. So, and I know he coached in the big leagues for a while after that. He may still be. I have to look it up, but yeah, that was just a guy. A guy named Wirtz pitched for the Oakland A's for a while in the big leagues. I knew that the organization liked him when he was with us, but I didn't necessarily see the writing on the wall that he was going to be a big leaguer. So it was kind of cool to see him make it. He did pretty well.
Awesome, man. Now the last question from me for now is one that I would like to ask in the context of the NLBMArt community and the work that we've all been done. Since joining the project, I've become quite interested in what the Negro Leagues mean to African Americans growing up nowadays. Now, obviously, we're a couple of generations removed from the end of segregation in baseball. And given that you played pro ball for quite a while, I was wondering what did the Negro Leagues mean to your African American teammates? Is this something that they talked about, or was it something that they, may have not have been quite so sensitive to, given that obviously we grew up watching Black athletes as standard, and they weren't really necessarily viewed as an abnormality as they would be kind of a generation before that?
That's a tough one. I think it was different for different guys, but some guys would wear that on their sleeve pretty much at all times, and it was that me against the world kind of thing. And I don't think that was ever a bad thing, just used it to propel themselves. I don't think it was a bad thing at all. It was definitely on the forefront of the conversation when we would have Negro League Day, and we would actually put the uniforms on. I think I wore the grays one time, which was a blue top and blue pants. So it was kind of, I didn't like wearing blue pants, but it was cool wearing the grays. I've still got pictures of me wearing that somewhere. But it was really cool. And of course, obviously when you play that game and you have African-American teammates, then, you want to talk about it. And so it's kind of cool, sometimes to hear that. And of course, it's still in that conversation, even when they played, and even now, that there's not enough Black players. There's still not enough. And then the question is raised, why is that, and what's the difference, and why are they choosing to go different route? It may be, in my mind, it may be that the road to the big leagues is a lot longer and harder. It's not one of those things where you're drafted and boom, you're in the league, like NFL and NBA. I know NBA has the G League and those kind of things, but baseball, for most people, 99.99 have to really work their way all the way through the minor leagues. Countless guys, even like you remember Ron Guidry, Louisiana Lightning, pitcher of the Yankees Cy Young Award winner. Okay, so he was my pitching coach one year in Lafayette, Louisiana. Coolest thing ever. But he we got a copy of his book. He actually wrote a book. So we're reading it as fast as we can. We're trying, the guy's sitting literally in our dugout. So, but he almost quit in the minor leagues. I mean, and that tells you something. He literally got in his car and started to drive home, and then decided to turn around and go back. And then the rest was history. I mean, the guy was like 24 and 2 or something crazy one year in the big leagues. So that just puts a kind of how hard it is to make it all the way through for most guys. Of course, now some guys literally put it in their contract too, that they have to get a shot at the big leagues by a certain amount of time. But that's pretty rare. And then it's even more rare for anybody to go, right out of high school. I don't know the last guy that's even done it. I know there was a Rangers pitcher way back when that could really, really bring it out of high school, and he didn't last very long. That's such a huge jump. I mean, it's just crazy to imagine going from high school to the big leagues. So
yeah, that was David Clyde, and then they brought him up because he was from Texas, and I think it was like he finished his last high school game, and then 2 weeks later he was starting for the Rangers.
Yeah, can you imagine that? I know that's a really, really long answer to your question about that, but I guess to circle back, it's just, I think it's still an ongoing thing, and I think it's I wouldn't say it was one of those things they talked about a lot, but we talked about race a lot, and so it goes hand in hand. If you're going to talk about race and you're on the baseball field, then why wouldn't you talk about the Negro Leagues? And the discussion was always, could those guys, if they were in the big leagues the whole time, would they have shattered those records? And a lot of guys, you have to think that they would have. I mean, a lot of the hitting records, Satchel, and a lot of the pitching records probably would have fell. That poor guy didn't get a shot at the big leagues until he was 40 something.
48, I believe. I think 48 was like the oldest rookie.
Isn't that crazy? So, and that guy was, from everything you hear, was just absolutely dominant. So there's just no telling. But yeah, it's a conversation that was had. It was a conversation that continues to be had to this day. And obviously, I think now you see it, and maybe Tad was a big part of this, but now you see it seems to be a really big conversation right now. And so even more than there was a couple years ago, for sure. So it's good that it's being talked about again. I know with the Josh Gibson thing, and I hope that gets pushed through where the MVP, gets named after him. That would be definitely deserving, and would continue that conversation in the right way every time they awarded, that award every year. Then people are going to talk about it, and they're going to talk about him, and then the Negro Leagues. And so it would be really helpful if that goes through, and I think it should.
Absolutely, completely agree. Great answer, Chris. I've taken up a bit too much of your time. I think I'm going to let Jason and Tad step in. Jason, first off, do you have anything else you want to discuss?
Yeah, I was gonna let Tad go because we've talked to Chris before, and he's Tad might have to like bail at some point and get paid to do some work.
Sounds good. Tad, do you have anything you want to discuss with Chris?
You know what? So I took all kinds of notes here as you were talking. There's all kinds of things I could comment on, but what I was just looking for, because I just wrote it down and I can't remember where it's actually posted out on social media now, but in the 10 years after Jackie Robinson broke the color barrier, something like 7 of the next 10 rookies of the year, including him, were former Negro Leaguers, or maybe it was 8 of the rookies of the year and 7 MVPs, something like that. Those numbers are inflated by one, but that's the proof's in the pudding, man.
Yeah. If that doesn't tell you right there,
yeah, that's the best proof point of all. And we all know, like how littered the major leagues are with 4A players, right? After the color barrier was broken, those leagues thrived for another few years, but were decimated by getting players plucked out and stuck on minor league teams and never really given their own chance either. So that's where I think the true story of the Negro Leagues got the as good as they were. I think that's where it got kind of tucked away to die. The lore and the legend is in the minor leagues. They took them out of their own league and with the promise of major leagues, and they still never got their chance. They were just getting paid to play somewhere else, and more than likely line a white man's pocket. So it's interesting. The more you dig into this whole story, it's interesting. But when it comes down just to were they legitimate? Hell yeah, they were legitimate. Look at the major league numbers. One thing I think Bob Kendrick, was the guy who said it before Hank passed away. He's like, who are the 2 greatest living baseball players of all time? Hank and Willie. Who Willie is absolutely the greatest living ball player now. Who's next? I'm not sure, but it's unfortunately not a Negro Leaguer.
Oh, interesting. So I'm big in the Project 70, and one of the artists had done is Willie Mays card, and I was like, okay, that's great. We saw that in Project 2020. Just probably say something different, but what it is an homage to the Negro League players and passing the flame. So it was going to Willie, to Griffey, and then Griffey handed it off to Mookie Betts. And that's about the best I can think of. That's not a bad way of putting it.
Well, so I had it was so surreal. I can't put it into words correctly to say, but the honor is not doing it justice, but the honor of being on a call with 4 former Negro Leaguers on Saturday, along with the Buck Leonard Association, and having the chance to talk with them was really, really cool. And we really just scratched the surface. It was kind of an organizational call. And but just like you were coached by Guidry, those guys were coached by the great Negro Leaguers of the day. And that's why it's so important. I feel like the guys who are still alive today, save for Willie Mays, who else? If I'm missing other prominent players that played in the Negro Leagues, let me know. I should know. But the guys who are living, and there's at least 40 to 50 guys who played in the late 50s, 60s, or leading up to 1960, late 50s, that are still alive, and they've got great stories to tell. And so it's cool to see. There was an unfortunate event over the last week that we had to move the webinar that was scheduled, but it will be rescheduled. It already is actually rescheduled, and it's really cool to have the opportunity to engage with those guys while they're still here. And so that opportunity is coming back up. And it's the best story that I heard on Saturday was from one of the guys, Larry LeGrand, who was talking about just recently, within the last 3 or 4 months at least, depending. We can look back and check the dates, but he said he got a call, thought that he heard it was somebody that he knew, and so he replied back, hey buddy, and he's like, hey, this isn't Buddy, this is Charlie Pride.
Oh,
and,
wow.
and then I didn't quite recall if he said that he was Charlie Pride's backup catcher, or if I guess, yeah, Charlie Pride was a pitcher, right? Or was he a catcher? So anyway, they were teammates, put it that way, for the Memphis Red Sox, he said. So yeah, like I said, we just scratched the surface. Can't wait to do more of that.
Yeah, that's awesome right there.
Yeah.
I suppose that leads us, Tad, nicely on to NLBMArt and the status of the project. Where are we at the moment with what are the latest developments with NLBMArt? Where are we headed at the time being?
Well, we need a special episode. We need a special episode for any crazy announcements here.
I don't think we're quite ready for crazy announcements, but we're definitely in teaser mode, I think, in a couple of things. We're going to be so. Yeah, there's a big story here. There's background, but we're circling the wagons and really starting to create some potential connections, some absolute connections, some potential connections that are really going to be focused on building this whole platform out as a piece of a bigger puzzle. And the bigger puzzle really is the families of the Negro Leagues. And I think the rest of the organizations and institutions of the Negro Leagues too, but starting with the families of the Negro Leagues who have an amazing opportunity. Actually, they don't have an opportunity. They're already doing this. That they have for years been working in their communities and building trust in their communities and providing programs of support of all different kinds to their communities. And the one thing that they've done that's just it's invaluable is build trust in their communities. They have programs like STEAM programs and science, technology, engineering, art, and math, right? They've got some programs in place, and they're kind of fledgling. In some cases, they're just piloting them. But what we are really starting to see is this bigger opportunity to create their brands and create the structure for that kind of programming that will really attract some big time sponsors and big time resources. Because those big time tech resources have directives, not just initiatives, but actual directives to reach into the communities that need help and help them, providing resources from money to technology to people to help them. So that's where the really big opportunity lies. Is if we can help, and we're kind of this whole idea is kind of starting with the Buck Leonard Association, but if we can create the brand of Buck Leonard and help tell the story of the Negro Leagues at the same time, and also at the same time you create and distribute curriculum into their community that will start to build a pipeline of qualified students for internships and for college and for jobs in those fields. That's the real big opportunity that puts goosebumps on my arm. So I'm all in on helping the Buck Leonard Association. They've got me hook, line, and sinker. And so we are really focused on building up that brand. What we're going to be doing is hosting a gala event. I should, it still feels really weird to say we, but like I said, they got a gala event this fall, end of August, early September is what we're looking at right now. There will be a really, really big announcement about that, a really, really cool announcement around that event. And a good friend of ours has volunteered her services and technology for a virtual event platform that's just super, super cool. And that platform in and of itself and that gala event could potentially be, a kind of an unveiling of some bigger things if we're able to put the right things in place around their programs. If we can build out a little bit more structure to their programs and present it in a great way, then I think we've got an opportunity to go out and get some funding well in advance of this gala event. So, Chris, we're definitely going to need a big Buck Leonard portrait for an auction. We're hoping to raise a lot of money. I don't yet know what a target is, but I can tell you that the Buck Leonard Association has the right person in charge in Rose Hunter. She thinks big. And so, yeah, that's the biggest news right now, I think, is what's on the map on the calendar as something that's going to really engage the whole community again. Certainly the stuff going on with Josh Gibson, we need to circle back with Sean and we're getting there's actually I'll tease a little bit more and say that Eric Kittelberger is going to have another pretty cool piece. I would venture to guess pretty soon around the Josh Gibson MVP campaign. Structure-wise of NLBMArt, we're still operating in the grassroots mode, but on the calendar, actually by the end of tonight, at some point, I'll be sending out another note on a steering committee meeting to kind of set the course on a few different things. But a lot of different weird things have been falling into place in the last week. Pretty cool.
I think it's spring training. I think that's what it is. Everyone's on baseball mode again because I think everyone's in the upswing now.
I've got really contrarian thoughts about baseball. If you want to go that far, I remember. Seriously, man, I was sitting watching the one of the last few games I went to was an Everett Aqua Sox game, and was a short season A ball, and it was the whole sky was filled with smoke, and they were watching the air quality. I was there with my buddy whose sister worked there, and so we were getting these reports on air quality, and it was just teetering on whether or not they would just have to end the game. And I just was sitting there going, how surreal is this? Like, we're just going to sit here and watch baseball while the world is burning around us. So baseball is a very sustainable, it's a big consumption, industry, and it scares me for its future. But hey, in training.
I just have one more question for Chris off the back of what we were talking about there, Chris. As a pitcher, if you could match up against any Negro League hitter from history, who would it be?
Golly, any hitter. Well, I'll tell you what. Probably gonna have to go with this guy just because I have his signature.
Ernie Banks.
There is it not close enough?
Oh, that's Buck O'Neill.
Buck O'Neill.
Buck O'Neill.
Nice.
Yeah. Only because I have his signature.
It was the closest signature you had to the spots.
Golly, I mean, there's so many of them just because, I mean, as any pitcher would want to face the best, and so, gosh, I mean, you want to see if you can get it past Josh, right? You know, Gibson, you see if you can. Yeah, I guess, you know, but yeah, I think, you know, it'd be cool is just to walk my butt in the game and just to play in a Negro League game. How stinking unbelievable would that be? You know, you talk about old timers games, but to be in that situation, pitching in one of those games would be just unreal. We'll just leave it at that.
Good answer. Good answer.
Yeah, I mean, hey, look, I've gone in the off season and before and pitched a couple games in Mexico and stuff like that, and I'm from Nebraska, and I've pitched, you know, all over the United States, and it's just so different. There's a different. I mean, baseball is baseball. Don't get me wrong, but when you're in a different situation, it's like, I don't know. It's like you're playing baseball in Mars sometimes, because it's just, yeah, you're playing baseball, but everything around you is so different. You know, like you go to Mexico and they're calling balls and strikes in Spanish, and you have to sit and think for a second, like I know that was a strike, but he didn't. I don't know.
I think that made arguing with interesting.
Yeah. Well, as an American guy in Mexico playing, I didn't argue with anybody. I wanted to make it back.
Guys, I don't have anything else at the moment for Chris. Anything else from you, Jason?
Yeah, I was going to ask him. So, being a pitcher, you get a lot of free time. I said you obviously did some art with your free time, but what was your other favorite pastime to do on the days off?
Oh, well, I mean, everybody played. We were video game, you know, kind of generation, so we obviously played a lot of video games. For me, music. I didn't play music, but I listened to music like crazy, you know. And back then we didn't have everything on our phone, or we didn't have iPods even at that time. So, you know, you'd get on the bus and you'd have your huge CD case, you know,
Yeah.
and you'd have your little box of batteries, because you were about to go on a 12-hour bus trip and didn't want your batteries to die. Yeah, I mean, I just had a huge music collection, and so I was big into that. And I think it just helped pass that time too. But you know, that and, you know, playing pranks on each other, that's, you know, baseball guys, that's what you do. So that usually didn't stop, you know, it didn't stop when you left the field, because you were always around each other. So.
Any memorable pranks? Yeah.
You brought up pranks now. I hear a favorite prank.
Oh gosh. Well, all right. We I don't know if I told you guys this one before or not. We had one year, we had a sleeper bus, right? So it was kind of like a casino bus. It was like a regular bus up front, pretty much, but it had the seats like a Winnebago kind of thing. But in the middle, it had 18 bunks, you know, beds, and then in the back was literally like the party room, right? And so, yeah, some guys just stayed in the back the whole time. That's a different story. But our center fielder, Evan Cherry, decided he was going to go to bed early, right? And so he's in his bunk, and we had an endless supply of athletic tape, and so we literally started stringing athletic tape. We taped him into his bunk, right? and so none of the air conditioning could get in there, and so the next thing you know, he wakes up and he's just sweating, you know, bullets. He punches his way through the tape, and he starts looking to hit guys.
That's a classic.
The question that you teed up for everybody was, what was your best hype song?
Yeah, what was your jam on the road?
Like what did you listen to get fired up?
Well, I mean, my last 3 years of pitching, I came out to Enter Sandman, you know, ode to Trevor Hoffman, but that's what I came out to. But so a big Metallica fan, but metal kind of gets me going, you know, Pantera, you know, yep. Cowboys from Hell, you know, that kind of stuff. But Metallica was it when it, you know, you get me going. So
probably I'm guessing you stayed away from Walk by Pantera.
Oh, that's a good one right there. Yeah.
Great song, but a bad omen for a picture, I think.
Well, yeah, but Probably just because you're going to get so fired up, you're not going to hit the strike zone for about 4 batters. But
True. All right, guys. Let's say we call it a night. Thank you so very much, Chris, for joining us again and we managed to get through the whole thing this time without falling off. Before we head off, would you like to plug your website and social media?
Sure. It's chrisbrownsportsart.net. Instagram, same thing, Chris Brown Sports Art. So just start Googling Chris Brown Sports Art and you can kind of see everything I'm on. But Tad, let me know what you need going forward, man, and I'm game. So
yep.
Definitely want to be involved.
Find your favorite Buck Leonard image.
You betcha. I'm ready to start looking.
Brilliant talking to you again, Chris. Jason, you should probably plug our podcast that will be coming back soon. Check it out on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, everywhere else you get your podcasts. Facebook.com/Caps and Pipes for Facebook. It's Ball Caps and Bagpipes on YouTube and at Caps and Pipes on Twitter. I believe the Instagram is at Ball Caps and Bagpipes.
Caps and Bagpipes. Yes,
we're pretty much everywhere. Tad at NLBMArt on Twitter and NLBMArt.com for the project. Am I right in saying that?
Yeah, I'd say follow us along on Instagram. It's still all me right now managing all this shit, so I can't really get to Twitter.
Is the Instagram just the same handle?
At NLBMArt. Yeah, stay tuned.
Perfect. Yeah, I mean, nice teases there. Hopefully we'll have some bigger news to come in the coming weeks. On that note, we will call it a night.
Hey, great seeing y'all.
Hey, great to see you, Chris. It's always a pleasure.
All right, many blessings.
Bye, everyone. Thanks for watching.